The three stages of computing. So the three stages of computing are we're going to have some kind of an input, and we're going to have some kind of processing, and then we're going to have some kind of an output, whether it's to the monitor, to a file, or to a printer. So the input can come from anything. It can come from another computer, a mouse, a keyboard, or something in the environment like heat or cold or water, something like that. So the basic components of a computer. So as far as input, we have a keyboard, we have a mouse, and we have a scanner. We have a microphone, we have a CD, DVD, ROM drive, and we have many a plethora of other input devices. We have tablets now that we use for drawing. We have this little guy that I'm using to change the slides, all kinds of different stuff. So the output, the classical output devices are printers, plotters, which use big drawings like for engineers. We have displays and we have speakers for audio. We have, as far as processing goes, we have a motherboard. We have extra superfluous chipsets, including the CPU. We have processor chips like for clocks and things like that. We have expansion slots. We have battery power. We have memory chips. We have address buses and data buses. So we have address buses and data buses. So we talked earlier about addressing memory. So we need address lines to say which address in memory we're addressing, right? We could be addressing, memory address 6048, and then the data that goes in it is here. So here's this bus is gonna tell you the address, and this bus is gonna tell you the data. So we saw that picture earlier about the houses, the three houses, and they were all going up to the telephone pole lines. So each house is going to have data going from and to it, and the address lines will tell you which address of that house is actually talking right now, or it could be the destination of where the data, if it's coming in, where it's going. So you need multiple different buses, right? You need an address bus and you need a data bus. Now you can also have, in more simpler systems, simplistic systems, you can have a data bus that might be 4, 8, 16, 32 lines, and then you can have one control line that may tell you which chip is getting either read or written to, read from or written to, based on that one line. So there's different ways you can do it, and this was kind of an evolution of how things change. But today, we certainly have multiple data bus lines, and then we'll have multiple address bus lines. So for input and output, we have a floppy disk drive, we have a hard disk drive, and by the way, they still make USB floppy drives. I have one, and that is in 2016. And we have a compact disc recordable, CDR, compact disc rewritable, so CDRW. We don't really it's hard to buy a computer today with those in them, so those are on their way out. We have a tape drive, which are still in wide use in the enterprise, and then we have external storage devices like zip drives and jazz drives. Those are pretty hard to find today, but they still make them. iOmega makes them. And then we have network cards, modems, hard disk drives, and again, floppy drives. So support hardware, what is this about? So this support hardware is going to be power to power those devices, and an uninterruptible power supply to keep those devices powered in the event of a spike or a sag in power. So a spike is when the power goes up real high for just a flash of a second. So if we have 120 volts and then it jumps up to 150 volts for just a second, we need to be able to handle that. And then if the power all of a sudden is at 120 volts and then it drops down to 90 volts and then back up, we need to be able to handle that as well. And that's what the UPS does. So we don't mess up our chips. Or say you're writing to memory at that time, that sag in power may cause that write to fail, and it might write, bad data, or it might write to the wrong section of memory if the address lines aren't transmitting enough power. If they're not able to get enough power, you get some weird situations when that kind of stuff happens. So we don't want that in our computers. And then we have a surge suppressor, and they're measured in joules, and you need to read the fine print on these surge suppressors even today in 2016, because they might only handle 800 joules, where a good one that might cost you a couple of bucks more can handle 16,000 joules or 1,600 joules of energy. So it tells you how much of a spike it can handle. If that spike is too high, it will only suppress 800 joules of that energy, and if it comes in at 1,600 where this is 800, you're still going to get this much of a spike that's going to pass through the surge suppressor and hit your equipment. I've seen people in office buildings where they're messing with the wires and tapping the wires together on the same circuit that a computer was on, and it actually shot the hard drive out of the machine before the voltage gets up so high. It actually kicked the disk right through the plastic on the machine and kicked it out onto the floor. It's unbelievable what can happen with electricity. So you want to make sure you have a good, solid, rock solid, clean power supply. So it's a good idea for any critical computer system to have a UPS on it. It's absolutely critical. So chapter summary here, the 3 stages of computing are input, processing, and output. We have various components that perform each stage of computing, and we have some components that perform both input and output, like memory chips and things of that nature, a hard drive, read and write. And today we have solid state drives where they're not really spinning disk platters, which we'll talk about later, but they're actually just memory locations, but the memory locations will persist even without power. So they can remember, they write in such a way that they'll remember when the power is not applied. Where RAM, as soon as you take the power away, everything goes back to 0, or some value that it just happens to have when it starts up. Your more expensive computers will actually write all zeros to that memory as they're powering up. They check it and make sure that it's working actually, in addition to that. So then hardware support components help to ensure safe computer operation and efficient performance.